Good day, everyone. It is September the 25th, 2020, and I'm making this video to point out basically a quick size comparison between these two weapons. We have the Smith Wesson M&P9 Shield, the 7 and 8 round capacities, and then we're comparing that to a Smith Wesson J-frame model 649-2, which is chambered in 38 special. I will also, talk about some things in comparison with revolver versus semi-auto in this video. But to get started, it's been said officially and slightly unofficially that the Model 649, or the Model 642 to be exact, the airweight, which this is a platform that comes from that, is like one of the top, or if not the number one seller of handgun for concealed carry, pocket pistol, and home defense in some cases. The Model 649, the Model 642, which this is not. The Model 642 is the ones that you will most commonly see in gun shops, and that's still being sold and manufactured by Smith & Wesson. It's the Centennial model. They do have some that still have the hammer exposed, hammer with the spur on the back. Those are supposed to be like one of the number one top selling handguns for concealed carry and pocket pistol, regardless to all the talk and hype that you hear about semi-autos, and there may be some semi-autos that can be pocket pistols, but we talking about going below calibers of 9mm, going into your 380s or 22s, things of that nature. And that's like to me, like a different ballpark, because the issue of stopping power comes into play. And there's tons of video on YouTube about that. But as far as 9mm, these type of pistols, which there's so many of them now, these kind of like foot the bill for a lot of, like a larger caliber, the 9mm and up, for concealed carry, pocket carry, however you want to go about doing that. But with that being said, let's get into the size comparison. I'm going to overlay these two pistols on top of each other. In length, basically, we talking 6 inches in length and maybe about 4 or 5 inches in height, maybe 5 inches. And we're doing this like this. We got the J-frame on top of the Smith & Wesson Shield, and from the tip of the barrel on both weapons to the very back here in this area, and I have it flush at the bottom, it's basically the same length. Just to give you an idea of what you're dealing with as far as size. What makes this revolver a better concealed weapon is because you lose all this area here. You had this big chunk right here that can possibly print depending on what you're wearing. And with this, it's all tapered off here. And if this shroud was not on the hammer, you would have this exposed right here, giving you a little bit more concealability. So if I were to tilt it up, you can see what I'm talking about with this chunk back here in the back from the semi-auto. Basically the same size. As far as width, the cylinder on the revolver is slightly larger. Okay. You can see from the tip of the barrel to the rear that they're the same in length. And as far as height, as far as height is concerned, they're about the same height. About the same height. So there still may be some people, and these weapons have been checked, for safety. It is unloaded, as well as this. Both weapons are unloaded and free and clear. So there's some people that may be caught in the dilemma of which one to get for concealed carry, for everyday carry, and self-defense. And there's some pros and cons, as I mentioned in my previous video. Revolvers in certain situations, as I was saying it incorrectly, but shit hits the fan, which I was trying not to say, would be an ultimate weapon, because without a speed loader, without a speed strip, you can still load this weapon by hand and it will serve its purpose to fire a projectile. With this weapon, if you lose the magazine, which I stated in a previous video, it only came with one, but I did buy an additional magazine. If you lose that magazine in a firefight, you have to reload, you might have to run, you might have to relocate. That magazine is gone. Even if you lose a second one in a firefight, which would be quite a bit of number of rounds fired, and you have no magazines, this weapon is, like I said previously, it becomes a paperweight. It holds down the mail that's on your dining room table. That's the only thing that it will be good for until you're able to get magazines. Well, people say buy more. Well, I just purchased this weapon on September the 12th. I picked it up on the 16th. I made a prior video about it. I do intend to get more magazines. Basically, I'm going to have 6 in total, because I have 2, a 7 and an 8 round magazine for the Shield. And I'm going to get 2 more 7 rounds and 2 more 8 round magazines. I don't intend to trade it in. I believe that, once I purchase something and it's good enough to suit me and I can, master it well, I hold on to it. I don't constantly trade in weapons and do this, that, and the other. However, I may be in the market for trading in my Glock 17, because I just feel like it's too much weapon as far as a handgun is concerned, and size is a little bit too much for what I need for right now. I think right now in my life, things are just kind of being crunched down to just small pocket size concealed carry pistols. Some things people may want to consider when it comes to revolver versus semi. I still think revolvers have a valuable place in this day and time. Even in this world of semi-autos and high capacities and things like that, if you are trained properly with your grip, your trigger control, sight alignment, and round placement on target, these weapons are still worth their weight in gold. One thing you won't have to worry about with a revolver is feed issues, as far as jamming, feed issues, failure to ejects, any other type of internal mechanical problems that could arise. On this particular weapon, this is a 649-2. I bought this weapon brand new in 1993. This is an all stainless steel frame. This was pre-key lock. Approximately 3 years after I purchased this, they went out of production. So for that reason, I really would not want to carry this weapon, because it's like an antique now. It weighs like 19.5 ounces, and probably fully loaded, it might come out to even 20 ounces. It does have a lot of weight, and it's actually slightly heavier when loaded than this is when it's fully loaded. But I love these revolvers. They're rugged, they're tough. I've heard some negative thing about the key locks that are being placed on these. Um, but as far as functionality, they're reliable. If your ammunition is fresh and stored properly, this thing will fire when you want it to. Um, However, with the semi-automatic, you can have issues if you're not using, good ammunition from a good manufacturer. You can have failure to feed problems. Your spring and your magazines could go weak if you keep them loaded all the time. They can go weak, and you can have failure to feed issues. You can have some type of mechanical issues internally where you could have failure to eject. And sometimes those two issues alone can be due to faulty ammunition. Um, I don't recommend anyone to use reloads of any kind, especially in a semi-auto. One thing I noticed years ago was that Glocks are not reload ammo friendly. I mean, they can be picky and finicky. I've seen lots of people shoot Glock 19s and Glock 26s, and every 2 or 3, maybe 4 rounds, they're having a failure to feed issue or a failure to eject because those weapons require, and I'm quite sure like this one would as well, factory loaded ammunition. You know, I've seen a lot of people, and what made it so bad was I was standing on a firing line with like 30 people. There were a few revolver guys, but everybody was getting into this new phase. The Glocks were becoming popular. They were kind of like becoming the king of the hill. And I would go out there with a 5 or 6 shot revolver and just outdo those guys and make them really look stupid as far as shooting, putting rounds on target, and reloading. Semi-automatics are supposed to be faster as in terms of reload, but I was standing next to people with a revolver and a speed loader, outdoing them and finishing up the cycle of the course as I'm just sitting there looking at everybody still firing and struggling to reload. That should have been embarrassing to the people that wanted to look down on the revolvers and wanted to switch over to semi-auto. But like I said, you have more chances of mechanical uh, failures with a semi-auto than you would with a revolver. Another thing that you may want to consider, uh, the verses between these two in operation and functionality, is that when some people get older, or when you're looking at the aspect of battle of the sexes, man versus woman, some people may have issues with limp wristing when it comes to semi-autos, meaning your wrist is weak and the recoil of the weapon and the severe flexing of the wrist will cause feed issues where the slide is jammed and the shell can't fully eject. As you get older, you may come across things like arthritis. I'm not sure about gout. I know it's a disease that affects your joints, but let's just say severe arthritis. It may be difficult for you to rack the slide, especially with these double like style retention springs that's on the guide rod on a lot of these newer semi-autos. It may be a little bit more difficult. Your wrist, you lose some of the dexterity in your hands and how your fingers is and how you can grip certain things. Or you may be someone who's been in an accident in some type of way, any type of accident that could have injured your arm, your shoulder, and some of those injuries in those areas can affect the dexterity in your hands and your fingers and your grip. it can weaken, it can loosen certain nerve damage. I remember some years ago, I was stabbed in the shoulder about 15 years ago, and to this very day, I still have a numbness from here to here in my finger. Thank goodness I'm able to move it, but that's just an example. It could have affected me in other ways. But with a revolver, if you have issues with, weak muscle grip as far as your grip or limp wristing, this weapon is easier to reload. You don't have to do any racking of the slide. It's just a simple thumb latch. Cylinder swings out almost effortlessly. You can reload. You won't have any. You should always have a firm grip. Grip is just as important as anything when it comes to handling firearms. One thing I was taught was that the grip you grab your firearm with is the grip that you will either live or die with. So you want to practice on your grip. You want to practice your finger control on either weapon. You want to practice, your trigger control, your finger placement on the triggers, which is a whole nother video, because from what I was taught, there's two different ways to place your fingers on these triggers on revolvers versus semi-auto. The triggers are designed different. Revolvers have a more recessed curve type of trigger, and semi-autos have a more forward curve position. And that has a lot to do when you see people putting rounds on target and they're always pulling to the left or to the left and low. That plays a huge factor. Finger placement on these triggers. But as far as that, like I said, revolvers versus semi, they both good weapons. Both these weapons are equally the same size. For those that's older or for women, females, a lot of them tend to lean towards the revolver because of the ease of operation. You don't have to worry about having enough strength to work the slide if you're not strong enough, if your fingers are not strong enough and wrist, So those are some things to consider when it comes to semi versus auto. This is more easier operation. Everybody should start off this way and then transition to semi-auto, and keep yourself healthy so that you can have the strength to be able to operate it. So with that being said, I'm going to conclude this video. You all have a nice day, and thank you for watching.